Hey everyone, we are going to be looking at Surrealist films today. The date is 1929 from your Unit 2 notes. The first thing you're going to is Dreams of Dali. It's a 360 video. And here we have Salvador Dali. He's walking his anteater in Paris like you do. So we're going to talk about him a little bit today. So first we're going to look at the subconscious in action. So I have two videos for you. The one on the right is showing a sort of before and after. It's a lot shorter as well, so I think that one's a good one. But if you would like a longer film, there's also on the left a 50-minute shell shock film. All of them are a little troubling to watch, so just some trigger warnings there. But basically, soldiers were coming back from World War One with physical manifestations of mental illness. And that is kind of what got doctors interested in the unconscious and the subconscious. They were realizing, like, oh, this is not a physical injury, this is a mental injury. How do we treat it? What do we do? So we move into Sigmund. His sort of ideas was that everything in the unconscious comes from two things, either our desire for sex or our fear of death. So you don't want to get rich and powerful because you want power. It's because you have a fear of death or a desire for sex, or both. He also, one of his more interesting theories was that babies have sexuality. They also immediately feel jealous of the parent who has the same sex as the baby. So, like a male baby would be jealous of the father because the baby wants to have a sexual relationship with his mother and vice versa. I'm not sure how this fits in with all of our, new and reformed ideas on gender and sexuality, but this was kind of like at the time, like the new revolutionary thing was that, even children could have sexuality. He said that hysteria and emotional disorders came from this early trauma. One of his quotes on dreams is that the dream is the disguised fulfillment of the suppressed wish. So if you are, angry at someone and you dream that you hurt them, that is your fulfillment of a suppressed wish, that kind of a thing. He also kind of thought that our brains hide things from us, our subconscious hides things from us, so they have to, be put into symbols and things like that, and that's why our dreams don't make sense. Freud said that we had three parts of a personality. He said that there was the id. It's sort of the child, the instinctive physical desire, the part of you that instinctively wants, food and sex and to live and, has a fear of death. And it's kind of like, I want it now. I want it now. The ego, you can kind of think of it as someone in between the id and the super ego. The ego is sort of managing the id. It seeks to satisfy the id in socially acceptable ways. This is why when you feel hungry in class, you don't get up and run out and go get food immediately because you know you need to be in class for that moment. Your ego is saying like, nope, I need to wait a little bit. I need to do a bit of planning to get what you want, id. Um, and then we have the super ego. You can think of this as almost like your inner parent, but almost even like your inner possible like God if you're religious at all. So this is your conscience. This is your morals. Your super ego says whether something is right or not right. You can have it, you can't have it, it's not right. You want a lot of money, but no, you cannot rob a bank because it's not right. The problem with the superego, Freud says, is that it doesn't distinguish between thinking about doing a deed and doing it. So it can cause the id and the ego a lot of guilt for just having thoughts and feelings. So if you've ever, been in a relationship and you've walked by someone who, was attractive to you in some way and you felt guilty immediately afterwards, that's what the super ego is doing that. um, and then we have Carl Jung. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud were friends for a long time, and they kind of brought all these psychoanalytical theories together. They did end up getting in quite a fight, and then their friendship was completely shattered and they never recovered from it. But we are going to go into Carl Jung now. So, his thing is archetypes, which I think are really cool. So he's kind of saying that we have our conscious and our consciousness, but we have a natural inherited contents in our minds from, passed down from generations and generations and generations. And these things pop up in stories all the time. Um, so they're kind of sort of like stereotypical characters that pop up in stories, they pop up in TV shows, they pop up in our dreams, they're everywhere. Um, so, for example, the trickster. The trickster is an archetype that is someone who shows up everywhere. In Batman, the trickster is Joker. The trickster is cunning, smart. It's Loki from Thor, that kind of thing. We have the hero. You guys know the hero. So the hero, you can think of literally all comic book characters ever. You can think of Harry Potter if you want. Um, we'll come back to the shadow. We have the wise old man, the wise old mother as well. You can think of Dumbledore. You can think of for the wise old mother. You can think of like like a grandmotherly, like fairy godmother sort of crone like figure. You can think of the child, that innocence, the happiness that's in there. The mother, the maiden, the father. You've probably seen these stereotypes or these archetypes in stories before. And then there's also the shadow, right? So the shadow is sort of the dark side of the archetype. So if you think of the mother, the that archetype usually being like really caring, really like like calm, like steady, like a sense of stability. The shadow version of the mother would be like, let's say, Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. Cersei Lannister like kills people left and right. She's having incest. She's manipulating everyone. She cares about her children, but definitely still manipulates them. So the mother has like a shadow, right? The hero, has a shadow. There are these things called the anti-heroes. So if you think of Breaking Bad, the guy who's making a ton of meth, he's an anti-hero. He's someone that you are kind of rooting for, even though he's. There's also the anima, so the feminine within man, and the animus, or the masculine within women. So let's take a look at a Salvador Dali painting. So here's a Salvador Dali painting. And his goal, he said, was to paint his goal was to make paintings that looked like the hand-painted photographs of dreams. I always think Salvador Dali paintings are really lonely. Even if we do have two, or several characters here, um, there's always a lot of empty space in his paintings. Um, People don't seem to be touching, so I don't know, they just always seem to be very lonely to me. So, as we've been looking at it, you've probably seen possible two archetypes might be the child and the mother, right? In the background, it looks like you see, I don't know, possibly a rocket taking off. You see jellyfish around the air. This is the surrealism, right? This is stuff that could not happen in real life. Another Salvador Dali painting. You can click in it's a link. The painting is a link itself, and you can click on that to get a little tour. So this is called the persistence of memory. One thing I want you to kind of see is again that space, the lonely, vast, empty spaces. And you can see the clock is melting. Kind of time has no meaning here. You also see ants coming out of possibly a hole in a little flask or like a jar or something off to the left. And you're going to see that image in the film as well. You're going to see ants coming out of a wound in a hand as well. So, surrealism is a form of art that's meant to express the way we think, feel, and dream. Dream is the big thing here. Without rhyme, without reason, without morals. So, he wants these to be just paintings of dreams. The goal is to come up with the best visual representation of what it is like to be dreaming. So Salvador Dali really loved Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud's ideas. He adds all sorts of their archetypes and the id, ego, and the superego in this. So while we watch the film below, I want you to make notes on areas where you see a couple of things. Anything that you think could be the id, so anywhere you see somebody acting kind of like a child, that could also be the archetype of the child. But anywhere you see somebody acting out on, I want this, I want it now, I don't care if it's wrong. And you are going to see some of that because, as we talked about in class, there is some sexual assault in here. Where is the thing that's trying to like hold the id back? The super ego. Do you see like a parental figure who is maybe punishing or like, telling the id that they're bad? Any archetypes? Do you see any archetypes in here? Do you see the maiden? Do you see someone acting like a mother? A note is you're going to see title cards in French. We talked about title cards as being something that was used in silent films a lot, and this was a silent film. The title cards don't really make sense. Mostly they'll say like 4 years later when obviously only a minute has passed, or the next day when it's clearly been years, and this is meant to mimic how your dreams work. So I'm going to pause here. I want you to watch this video real quick. And if you're back, you probably saw a lot of disturbing content in here. I did not warn you about the eyeball. Sorry about that. That's the one that usually gets people pretty quickly. So we're going to talk a little bit about this in the discussion board. I want to go through a couple of things with you. So there's a lot of there's just some of the themes in here. There's some obsessive themes of eroticism, death, and decay. Okay, so the sliced eyeball, let's start there. Dali writes that the razor and the eye are fairly evident symbols for the male and female organs, and cutting for sexuality viewed as a destructive activity. Um, the fondled woman, you know what happens there. It's pretty explicit. During around that scene, the man, who I do believe is at least one of the ids in that scene, he picks up ropes and he is dragging a piano across the room, and then attached to the piano are like two dead donkeys and then two priests. I don't know if you saw it, but Salvador Dali is one of those priests, and he's kind of looking around and like, what's going on? I'm being dragged across the floor. I'm sure you saw a hand. This is supposed to be a symbol for masturbation. So at the time, young boys were told by adults that if they were found masturbating, they would have their hands chopped off. So that's why you see several times you see hands that are cut off, chopped off in the middle of the road, or as you saw, one man's hand was trapped in a door and you could only see, it kind of looked like his hand was cut off. So this is a big symbol from sexuality, even if it doesn't really make any sense. You also saw association, and you saw also at one point someone's armpit hair, because they didn't shave back then, turning into what almost looked like a prickly like cactus plant type situation, and then going back into the armpit hair. So in the surrealist film world, the tendency was to show that images themselves could think. It's like as if the film is just sort of showing a stream of consciousness, which was what your brain does. Your brain says, oh, this kind of looks like this and kind of looks like that. One question that I'm interested in is, who did you think was the main character? Did you think it was the man or the woman? I'd really like to hear that in the discussion board as well.